Dianne Driscoll, could you please introduce yourself for us?
Thank you, John. Yes, so I'm Dianne Driscoll, and I am a change coach, facilitator, speaker, and also a podcast host, similar to yourself, John. Um, but I guess I'm a very multifaceted person. I do lots of different things. If anyone's interested in human design, I'm a manifesting generator, which means I like my finger in multiple pies. But essentially, I'm a catalyst for conscious change. So I'm always just trying to help people, organizations, transition through change.
Catalyst for Conscious Change. That's wonderful. So here we are. This is my podcast on theology, spirituality, seeking the beyond theology with Jono. Dianne, would you please tell us, did you experience a spiritual calling at any point? What began your spiritual journey?
Oh, it's funny, John, to reflect on this because, you know, thinking about it, if I look at the first kind of spiritual calling I had, like I grew up in Ireland, in a Catholic upbringing. And my first spiritual calling, I remember being at about, I think I was about 8 years old.
Mhm.
And I suddenly started getting very much embroiled in the Catholic faith and particularly apparitions of the Blessed Virgin to whether it was, the children of Fatima, Yugoslavia. There was a lot of things going on around it. And at that time as well, there were a lot of moving statues in Ireland, which was a bit of a phenomenon. I'm not sure if that made its way to Australia, but at that time, I just started having this, like reading the Bible, was getting very, very holy, very, very into religion, and wanted to become a nun. So I thought,
Oh, really?
yeah, like, and now I look at it and I think the complete opposite now. But back then, I really felt very pious, very holy, very wanting to be in service to God as I knew him back then.
Mhm.
So it is funny that that was a calling at a point in time, but yeah, it was a fairly short-lived one. I seem to have moved out of that and moved away from it. But yeah, that was the earliest one.
That was the
Um,
earliest.
yeah,
Or
but I think
yeah.
more recently, and I guess it may be a little bit different to some of the other guests that you've had on the show as well. But in my 40s, I had what I consider to be a spiritual awakening of a different sort. So this was something that was more a shake up, a reckoning of my life, and this was something that was actually very physical for me. I energetically was feeling this in my body. My whole life got turned into turmoil. So you may view it as I don't know, an existential crisis. There's lots of
Mhm.
different ways you can look at it. But for me, there was a tipping point in my life that was like, okay, you need to have a hard look at yourself. You need to decide how you're showing up in your life. Are you doing, living life and operating in your business, operating in the world the way you want to? And it brought me down a lot more spiritual path and led to the podcast that I'm co-hosting at the moment, which is spiritual in nature as well. So it's, yeah, that has been probably the more recent spiritual explosion that I've had in my life.
So there was a second tipping point a little bit later in life that, drew you back into all of this, or at least in a different way.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
Definitely. Can you think of a time when your faith or your spirituality was seriously challenged by something?
Mm. Yeah, like lots of times, lots and lots and lots of times throughout life. But if I scan back on my life, the one that I have to acknowledge is in my teenage years. Like my background, I guess I've suffered with a lot of mental illness throughout my life, and my teen years were particularly difficult. And I had attempted to take my own life a number of times in my teenage years. So it's like I can look back at all of the other times where I may have been challenged in life, but you think when you
Mm,
get to the point where you want to no longer be here, when you want to, end it all, that is a time where your faith in everything, your faith in life and family and in God, the universe, whatever higher power you think is out there, all of that was challenged at that
mm,
point in time. And for me, so there was, I guess numerous attempts, but one in particular where I came through, and I just remember being in the hospital and my dad, like, so after having my stomach pumped and surrounded by doctors and medical team and coming through, and I remember the sense of disappointment that I was still here, like just being
Mm.
absolutely almost like, oh God, I have to go through this all over again because I'd had a number of failed attempts and wondering what is it going to take for me to exit this world. And my dad was sitting beside me and put his hand on my hand and he said, "This is the first day of the rest of your life." And I will never, I can still feel like the warmth of his hand. I can still feel those words sinking into me. And it was like it was a turning point for me. It didn't mean, the problems that we face don't just miraculously go away, but so much has to do with your mindset. It has to do with knowing that other people are around you. And, not that I would have thought it exactly at the time, but I had been saved for a reason. There was more work that needs to be done. And,
Yes.
I can look back now and I can say, well, if I had ended my life then, there's a lot of work that I've since done in the world that wouldn't have, come to bear, and a lot of lives that wouldn't have been touched in the way they have. So I am grateful that whatever higher power intervened on that day,
Mm.
that yeah, I'm still here to tell the tale.
And that follows into my next question. What helped to carry you through that? You mentioned your father holding your hand and you can still feel that moment. Was there anything else that also helped you carry you through that very difficult time, spiritually or
Yeah,
otherwise?
yeah, I think like I always sensed that, that there was all like, I mean, again, being brought up in a Catholic, like not just a Catholic family, but like Ireland's a very Catholic country. So there was always a belief in something that was greater than myself. I think when I became a teenager, that became, not the God of religion or of the Catholic faith. It was something bigger than that. So there was definitely a sense of there's something bigger at play, and to kind of trust. And now I would probably use the word surrender. Back then I wouldn't have, but just trust that there is, things are unfolding for a reason, that this too shall pass. And this too shall pass has been a mantra for me for most of my life, and I'm generally muttering it at some point in the
Yep.
day, thinking, this too shall pass, this too shall pass. And it's so true that if you can find something to hold on to, that and all of my work has to do with change, like I mentioned about being
Mm.
catalyst for conscious change. It's that there are always going to be ups and downs. There's always going to be the good followed by the bad. We're always transitioning through something. So if you can, if you're having a really good high at the moment, this too shall pass. And if you're having a really low at the moment, then this too shall pass. And that's the beauty of life, of being able to find that beauty in the variety. We're not just all there kind of flatlining, not having like a boring human experience. We're all subjected to things that occur to us, on any given day, and we all have our so-called cross to bear.
We do, and there are some difficult moments. And I'd like to sort of explore that. Was there, again, your father you mentioned, but was there anyone who guided you on your journey, a particular figure or person who mentored you or who assisted you on the journey?
Yeah, there are multiple, like definitely multiple, but I know my dad and my like his mother, my granny, who's since passed, but she was a huge influencing factor, like very very, very deep faith in God and religion, and like would go to mass and have her prayer book, and just it was so a part of who she was. But she was also very interesting in that she had this massive fascination with the paranormal and the occult, and like she had a library of books that was everything to do with Mother Teresa on one side, and then on the other side it would be to do with astral travel. So as a child, for me, like, and we would only visit them once a year because there were whatever, about 8 hours drive away from us. But I used to spend my time either talking to my granny or reading the books, and some of them I would have to sneak out because I was like not supposed to be reading those things. But she was a huge influence in the fact that you can be deeply religious, or you can have your own form of faith. You can have
Yep.
your own belief system in what you believe, and and be open to lots of other things. So she was definitely huge.
And I find that really interesting. You felt a calling towards these books, so you had to sneak them out and go for it
Yes.
yourself, which I think is amazing. You know, that you were seeking something, and I think that's just
Yes.
brilliant that you were willing to, you know, basically defy the authorities and go where your heart was calling you.
Absolutely. I remember lying on a selection of cushions because there was, like we'd all descend on my granny's and it wasn't enough beds for everyone. So it's like all the sofa cushions were piled on the floor. And here was me trying to astral project,
Yes.
following the instructions on a
Did it
book that I
work?
was reading. No, it didn't. I remember being really, really annoyed that it didn't
Yep.
work, but every night I'd be trying it.
But again, I think that idea of being able to go through the changes, the highs and lows, because life really is a series of changes and it doesn't go how we plan, does it?
Yeah,
Um,
and having those influences in your life, like that was very early and formative. And to this day, like, I mean, my granny has passed, but I chat to her all the time. Like, she's
yeah.
still very much a spiritual influence for me, or a life influence.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so still connected. But I guess two other people of note for me is Pauline Nguyen, which you may know as a professional speaker, but she is also a spiritual entrepreneur. And I had been working in like since I had my spiritual awakening.
Yes.
We all look for mentors and guides, when something is happening in our life, and she was definitely that for me. So she kind of took me under her wing and exposed me to, I guess, spirituality in ways that I had never experienced previously. And because my
Mm,
mind is like, I have a very curious mind, I like to be exposed to new things. It was great to work with her. And also Liz Volpe, who is my co-host on the Spiritual AF podcast, like
yes.
because the two of us are literally neck and neck experiencing all of these things that are happening in our more spiritual realms. And just to have someone that you can pick up the phone and say, you'll never guess what just happened to me today.
Yep.
It's like she's just been my partner in crime, for want of a better word. But it's so important for us to have those people that just get us, or they help guide us, or just kind of help shape who we are, particularly when faith and spirituality and religion, they're all very personal things, so you need to choose the right people that you
Yep.
go to.
And could you tell us about one of those conversations where you called one of those people up and said, "You'll never guess what happened"?
Oh God, and there's so many of them to even think about. But yeah, I guess my birthday this year. So I had been working, because I'm like a coach in the work that I do, and I wanted to do an online program. So I do lots of online work for corporate organizations, but I haven't done anything that has been a program that I can invite people into just from the general public or for my clients. And I have been beavering away on this for quite some time. And I was supposed to launch it in November, leading into December, that great time of year where everybody's doing New Year's resolutions and taking a hard look at themselves. And it just wasn't working for me. And I couldn't understand why. And I just had this feeling that all these signs and blocks were being put in my ways, that I needed to walk away from it. Don't force it, just walk away from it. And I was devastated. Like, I'd put so much effort into this, and I knew that there was a lot of good to be done from this, but the timing just didn't seem right. And then on my birthday this year, and I had parked it completely. I didn't have a new timeline, didn't have a new plan to launch it. But a series of events came up where it was a lady that I follow on Instagram had put up saying, "Oh, book in with me, pay whatever you can afford, a strategy session." Now, I was lucky I could afford to pay her full fee, but that was the impetus to kind of rattling me to say, okay. She helped me realize that the reason I had a sticking point was that I was charging too much, like as in, a lot of people in the coaching profession will tell you, oh, charge your worth and you need to do this. But the core of what I wanted to do was help as many people as I possibly could. And that
Yeah.
was at odds with charging a high fee for what I was doing. So she helped me realize, put it in at an affordable, price that as many people who can, jump on board can. And like, there's nothing to stop me from doing I guess a higher end or a more intimate one-on-one type coaching or smaller group coaching with other people. So all of a sudden I had this moment, but as I was about to get on the phone call with this lady, Amy Triscari, a bunch of flowers arrived. So I was
Oh,
literally just
wow.
coming on a Zoom call like this. The next thing, there's the ring at the doorbell, the phone's going off, and it was a delivery man outside with a bunch of flowers from Liz, my co-host on the podcast. And it was like that for me was a sign. It was like, whatever you're going to hear in this meeting with Amy, take action on it. So the minute I come through this, it was like straight on the phone to Liz with, oh my
Yes.
God, you're not going to believe what happened. And everything from that just seemed to be a series of events on that day that was, signs and synchronicities, or, someone looking out for me, whatever way you want to look at it, or divine timing, whatever words you want to put on it. But it felt like a very special moment. Now, there's lots of people in my life that if I'd picked up the phone and told them about it, they would have thought that I was absolutely crazy.
Yep.
Whereas, Liz is always my safe space to be able to say, you'll never guess
Yeah.
what happened.
And it's wonderful to have someone like that, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I heard you say earlier, this too shall pass. But are there any other religious or Bible quotes that you turn to regularly for inspiration or guidance?
Yeah, I think, and this fascinates me because it's actually related to change. So it's a prayer, and a lot of people will associate it with Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the serenity prayer. So God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And as a child, that was on, like, I can this lovely stained glass, like it looked like a little prayer book that was opened, stained glass, and it used to sit in our living room window, so the light would always shine in it, and I loved it, like even the
Yep.
calligraphy on it. I remember as a child just always being drawn to it, and being young, I didn't fully understand it, but I kept being drawn back to it. And now
Mm.
it's like, it is such a great, whether it's prayer, like I'll often post it and I'll take out the word God, because God for me, it's like, well, I'll let you figure out whatever, God may be the God of the Catholic religion or Christianity or, Judaism, Muslim, like whatever your belief is, or it may be a greater power in the universe. But to me, the sentiments of that is such a great way. It's such great guidance for life. And for me, I always, the fact that now that my life's work is all got to do with change, it's so interesting to me that was part of my childhood, and it's been like a guiding thread through everything I do.
That's amazing. And finally, Dianne, can you uh, share with us your single biggest spiritual lesson or idea that you'd like to share that you think will have the most impact?
Yeah, this is really, really hard because you look back at all the lessons and aha moments. I'm sure all of your listeners struggle with this question as well. But I think if I look at it from a personal standpoint, like what has had the most impact for me, and I think so much of my life I spent looking externally. So we're looking to whether it is God, whether it is teachers, your the figures of authority in your life, your leadership in your organization, those sorts of things. And then really coming back to the fact that, we've been given free will. We have been given, this life, this body to be the best that we can possibly be. And instead of continually giving our power away to others or seeking to be led by others, to really bring that back to yourself, because we are, whether you view it that you're a child of God or whether you view it that you are, an element of the universe. No matter what way you look at it, you are here for a reason. And if we continually give that power away to external forces, it keeps us small. It keeps us from being the greatest that we can be. And the extension of that for me, where I got to, is that my choice in the way I live my life is to live from love. And that's not necessarily a romantic love. It's actually more in terms of
Agape
the
love.
Yeah, like and it's that vibrational state, because I do believe that, what we put out into the world we attract more of. And having so
Absolutely.
many years with, significant mental health issues, I attracted more and more negativity, or more difficult situations to myself. But the more and don't get me wrong, I don't spend my days just sitting there in love, radiating, pure unconditional love out into the universe. That's not true. But I do have that as a benchmark for myself, that I kind of gauge myself, where am I at? And if I have an interaction with someone and maybe it's not particularly good, I will try to put myself into a position of saying, how can I come from a place of love to resolve this issue or to address this situation? So I'm not coming from a place that's being triggered or wounded, or, bringing all of my baggage of my life experiences with me. So that, taking personal responsibility for who we are, using our free will, stepping into our self leadership. And then for me personally, just living from love is really what guides all the work that I do.
Dianne Driscoll, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate it.